Vegetable oil is derived from the extraction of seeds or other edible parts of plants. It has a wide range of uses, not just in food preparation, such as cooking and frying, but also in non-food products like lubricants, cosmetics, medicine, soap, perfume, and even fuel. The production of vegetable oil involves several steps, starting with breaking down and crushing the source material, applying pressure with a press, and sometimes introducing heat. For certain types of plant materials, chemical processes are also needed to remove specific flavors or aromas. Chemically speaking, vegetable oil isn't all that different from animal fat. Both are primarily made up of triglycerides, molecules consisting of one glycerol and three fatty acids. The real difference lies not in the basic structure, but in the types of fatty acids attached to the glycerol. If you take a drop of cooking oil from your kitchen and compare it with a drop of fat from meat, like beef fat, both are rich in triglycerides. However, the fatty acids in each are different. And from that seemingly small difference, we get some very noticeable changes. Vegetable oil, for example, usually contains more unsaturated fat, making it liquid at room temperature. Animal fat, on the other hand, tends to have more saturated fat, giving it a solid or semi-solid consistency at room temperature. Humans have been using vegetable oil for thousands of years, but since the industrial era, our need for and consumption of it has skyrocketed. By 2024, global production of vegetable oils had reached 228 million tons, an increase of 4.5 million tons compared to the previous year. In this video, we'll dive into the history of some of the world's most widely consumed vegetable oils, including palm oil, palm kernel oil, olive oil, soybean oil, peanut oil, rapeseed oil, cottonseed oil, sunflower seed oil, and coconut oil. Previously, we've also created several long-form videos on the history of food, covering the history of staple crops, livestock, and alcoholic beverages. You can find those videos in the following playlist. Palm oil is extracted from the fruit of the oil palm, specifically from the reddish pulp known as the mesocarp. It's important to distinguish this from palm kernel oil, which comes from the hard inner core of the same fruit. Palm oil is widely used in the food industry, in beauty and personal care products, and increasingly in biofuels. Among all vegetable oils, palm oil is the most heavily produced worldwide, with an annual output of around 77 million metric tons, making up roughly 35% of global vegetable oil production. This number is expected to keep rising, and by 2050, global palm oil production could reach 240 million tons per year. Its popularity among food manufacturers is no coincidence. Humanity's growing dependence on palm oil is driven by its many functional benefits. When used for frying, palm oil tends to be more stable and less likely to break down quickly. It also has a higher smoke point, making it safer for high-temperature cooking. Compared to many other vegetable oils, palm oil is cheaper to produce. It also has excellent foaming properties, which makes it useful in the manufacturing of shampoos, soaps, and detergents. On top of that, palm oil works well as a food preservative, improves the melting point of ice cream, and serves as an affordable ingredient in biofuels. Indonesia is the world's largest producer of palm oil, with an annual production of about 46 million tons, contributing nearly 60% of the global supply. Its neighboring country, Malaysia, ranks second, producing around 18 million tons per year, or close to 25% of the global share. As consumption grows, the average person on Earth now uses around 8 kilograms of palm oil per year. But this soaring demand doesn't come without consequences. Oil palms require intensive farming and vast amounts of land. In Indonesia, the total area used for oil palm cultivation reached an estimated 16 million hectares in 2023. Large-scale plantations have raised serious environmental concerns, including deforestation, habitat destruction, and the endangerment of species such as the Sumatran tiger, Sumatran rhino, and orangutan. Botanically, oil palm trees belong to the genus Elaeus, under the family Ericaceae. There are two main species in this genus. The most commercially important one is Elaeus guineensis, native to West and Southwest Africa, found between Angola and Gambia, and the primary source of global palm oil production. The second species, Elaeus oleifera, is native to the tropical regions of Central and South America and is used locally for oil production in those areas. Humans have been using palm oil for over 5,000 years. In the late 1800s, archaeologists uncovered a substance in a tomb at Abydos, dating back to around 3000 BCE, which they identified as palm oil. It's believed that Arab traders had brought the oil into Egypt, and the amount discovered was substantial enough to suggest it was used primarily for food. Palm oil derived from Elaeis guineensis has long been a staple in the diets of West and Central African communities, widely used as cooking oil. European merchants, while trading along the West African coast, occasionally purchased palm oil to bring back to Europe. Across the stretch of coastline from Senegal to Angola, palm oil became deeply rooted in local cuisine and culture. Its entrance into the global economy began in the 1500s, carried aboard ships involved in the transatlantic slave trade. During the harrowing Middle Passage across the Atlantic, palm oil was essential for survival. It was used as a food source for enslaved Africans during their transport. Traders would also rub palm oil on captives' skin to make them appear smoother, younger, and more presentable at slave auctions. As the transatlantic slave trade was gradually abolished, the British government encouraged merchants to transition to alternative trades. Leveraging existing trade relationships in the African interior, many adopted palm oil as a new commercial focus. The push grew stronger in 1845 when Britain removed import duties on palm oil. Palm oil soon became the lifeblood of Europe's Industrial Revolution. Manufacturers discovered it was a perfect substitute for animal fat-based tallow in soaps and candles. Soaps made with palm oil produced richer lather, and candles burned clean without odor. Its utility extended to industrial machinery as well, where it served as an effective lubricant and played a role in tinplate production. By the dawn of the 20th century, an entirely new industry was devouring oils of all kinds. Margarine. Invented in 1869 by French chemist Hippolyte Mejmouriez as a cheap butter substitute, margarine quickly became a dietary staple among the working class in Europe and North America. Initially, palm oil was used to color margarine yellow, but manufacturers soon realized it was the ideal main ingredient. It stayed solid at room temperature and melted in the mouth, much like butter. By the 1870s, palm oil had become a major export for several West African nations. But with that rise came troubling labor practices, many of them repressive. Still, at this point, production relied entirely on semi-wild oil palm groves and manual processing, which meant quality was inconsistent and supply unreliable. By the 1880s, palm oil exports began to decline, overshadowed by the introduction of European colonial cocoa plantations. Before the mid-19th century, all palm oil was made by hand in West Africa, where the oil palm is native and had long been entwined with local livelihoods. Yet, the demands of the Industrial Revolution in Europe sparked a surge in palm oil consumption, and the need for a stable supply prompted the development of formal plantations. During the colonial and post-war eras, foreign investment fueled an aggressive expansion of these plantations. As demand soared, driven by population growth and urbanization, Europe could no longer rely on Africa's traditional production system. This pressure led European colonial powers to attempt industrial-scale expansion. There were early failed efforts to establish plantations in West Africa. Still, one British entrepreneur remained determined. William Lever of Lever Brothers, based in Liverpool, was eager to secure his own land concessions. He believed that a more controlled, industrialized approach to palm oil production would be the foundation of a thriving commercial trade. In the early 1900s, Lever began negotiating with Britain's colonial office for plantation land in Sierra Leone, Nigeria, and Ghana, then all part of British West Africa. However, the colonial office was hesitant, concerned that granting such concessions might create monopolies. Undeterred, Lever accepted an offer from Belgian authorities to establish plantations in the Congo Free State, now the Democratic Republic of the Congo. In 1911, Lever founded Huileries du Congo Belge, Belgian Congo oil mills, after signing a deal with the Belgian government, granting him access to a staggering 750,000 hectares of land for development. While the venture successfully introduced more mechanized palm oil production systems, infrastructure costs were high, and building efficient export routes for palm fruit and oil proved slow and challenging. Labor shortages were another major issue. The company struggled to attract enough workers for harvesting and factory operations, eventually turning to forced recruitment in cooperation with Belgian colonial agents. Despite these serious problems and the rise of highly efficient palm oil plantations in Southeast Asia that would later outpace African production, Lever's efforts laid the foundation for one of the world's first modern multinational corporations. His company would eventually become known as Unilever. Though Southeast Asia is now the global center of palm oil production, the oil palm tree itself wasn't native to the region. In fact, it only arrived in 1848 when Dutch botanists planted 4 seedlings in the botanical gardens of Buitenzorg, present-day Bogor, on the island of Java, Indonesia. At first, it was little more than an exotic decorative plant, but the story would change dramatically in the early 20th century when a Belgian entrepreneur named Adrian Hallet took a deeper interest in the plant's potential. With experience from the rubber trade in the Congo, Hallet was struck by how the ornamental palm trees in Indonesia produced significantly more fruit than those in Africa. Convinced that the tropical environment in Southeast Asia offered ideal conditions for palm cultivation, he made his move. Hallet established the first commercial oil palm plantation in Indonesia, specifically in Sumatra in 1911. Just 6 years later, he helped 2 French planters develop the first commercial oil palm estate in British Malaya in Selangor. It didn't take long for the region's productivity to surpass that of its African counterpart. By 1936, Sumatra had already overtaken Nigeria in terms of palm oil exports, signaling a shift in the industry's center of gravity. The colonial powers ruling Southeast Asia played a significant role in this transformation. They granted plantation companies broad access to land, allowing them to scale up operations rapidly. These companies hired vast numbers of coolies, a derogatory European term referring to migrant laborers, often from southern India, Indonesia, and China. The word itself came from the Hindi coolie, an Aboriginal tribal name, or the Tamil coolie, meaning wages. These laborers endured harsh working conditions, coercive contracts, and systemic discrimination, forming the backbone of the booming plantation economy. When global demand for natural rubber, a major plantation commodity at the time, fell after World War I, palm oil emerged as a valuable alternative for economic diversification. Companies like Guthrie, Barlow, and Hallett Sockfin pivoted to oil palm cultivation, repurposing the infrastructure they had developed for rubber. These companies laid the groundwork for intensive palm agriculture across colonial Southeast Asia. By the time World War II broke out in 1939, more than 100,000 hectares of plantations had been established in Indonesia and Malaysia, with Sockfin and Guthrie controlling over half of the global palm oil supply. But war brought disruption. Japanese occupation of key trading hubs like Singapore and Malacca severely weakened the region's logistical capabilities. Colonial administrators were detained or fled, trade routes were shut down, and plantations suffered from acute labor shortages. Exports plummeted to a mere fraction of their pre-war levels. Malaysia eventually recovered its export levels in the post-war years, but Indonesia's return to form took nearly 2 decades. The war had also fueled anti-colonial sentiment. Japanese propaganda framed the European powers as exploitative occupiers, and after Indonesia proclaimed independence in 1945, nationalist fervor surged. Under President Sukarno's increasingly radical economic policies, foreign-owned plantations lost the backing of the Indonesian government. Some were even attacked during the post-independence unrest, making the environment too volatile for industrial agriculture to thrive. In Malaysia, however, the story unfolded quite differently. Following World War II, the British Ministry of Food committed to sourcing palm oil exclusively from Malaysia, aiding in the sector's recovery. After gaining independence in 1957, Malaysia's new government continued to support foreign investment using palm oil as a key driver of economic growth. This model not only made Malaysia a global leader in palm oil exports, but also earned recognition from institutions like the World Bank and the United Nations for its potential to alleviate poverty in developing nations. While Southeast Asia's industry flourished, Political instability across post-colonial West Africa caused palm oil exports there to decline. In contrast, the Southeast Asian sector expanded rapidly throughout the 1960s. Engineers and researchers who had worked in Africa moved to the region, bringing their expertise with them and accelerating the development of plantation agriculture. After Indonesia transitioned to Suharto's New Order regime in the mid-1960s, the government threw its support behind foreign companies and palm oil investments. By the 1970s, the country had developed some 150,000 hectares of plantations. With additional financing from the World Bank and the Asian Development Bank, that number grew to 600,000 hectares by 1985. Today, oil palm plantations occupy just 5% of the world's vegetable oil farmland, yet they produce a staggering 38% of the global vegetable oil supply. The crop's productivity is unmatched. Oil palm plantations yield 10 times more oil than crops like soybeans, sunflower, or rapeseed. Both the flesh and kernel of the oil palm fruit provide usable oil, which contributes to its efficiency. In 2016, it was found that oil palm plantations yielded about 4.17 metric tons of oil per hectare, far exceeding the 0.56 tons from sunflower, 0.39 from soy, and 0.16 from peanuts. In terms of output per area, palm oil is the most sustainable vegetable oil crop available, requiring just 1/9 of the land needed by its competitors. But this remarkable efficiency comes at an environmental cost. The rapid expansion of palm oil plantations has been linked to widespread deforestation, destruction of natural habitats, and increased greenhouse gas emissions. Conservationists warn that this expansion threatens endangered species like orangutans and Sumatran tigers, whose forest homes are being cleared to make way for rows upon rows of palms. Soybean oil is one of the most widely consumed cooking oils in the world, and among vegetable oils, it stands as the second most used globally. Extracted from the seeds of the soybean plant, Glycine max, this oil plays a prominent role not only in kitchens but also in industrial applications. Being a drying oil, refined soybean oil has long been used as a base for printing inks, particularly soy ink, as well as for oil-based paints. By the year 2024, global soybean oil production had reached an estimated 67 million tons. China led the charge, producing nearly 20 million tons, or around 30% of the world's total output. The United States followed with close to 20%, and Brazil contributed about 17%. These three countries together dominate the landscape of soybean oil production, underscoring the global importance of this commodity. What makes soybeans stand out among legumes is their richness in oil. Unlike most beans, which are primarily grown for protein, soybeans are often referred to as oil seeds because of their relatively high oil content, about 18%, alongside 35% protein. This dual value, with strong market demand for both oil and protein, has given rise to a massive soybean processing industry. The key is in separating these two major components, and that separation is what gave birth to the modern soybean crushing business. The soybean plant itself is native to East Asia. Archaeological evidence suggests it has been cultivated for over 3,500 years. By the 13th century, soybeans had made their way to Java in the Malay archipelago, likely through migration and trade. European merchants, Portuguese, Spanish, and Dutch traded soybeans and their derivative products in Asia during the 17th century, bringing them eventually to the Indian subcontinent. In the 18th century, soybeans were introduced to the Americas and Europe, primarily through connections with China. Africa followed in the late 19th century, when soybeans arrived from China and soon spread widely across the continent. For a long time, however, soybeans weren't grown with oil production in mind. Instead, people consumed them in the form of traditional foods like tofu, tempeh, and soy sauce. Although soybeans did contain oil, their oil content was considered modest when compared to crops like sesame or peanuts. As a result, soybeans were seen more as a protein source than as a source of edible fat. That perception held strong for centuries. It wasn't until the Industrial Revolution that things began to shift. Technological advances in oil extraction opened new possibilities, especially in the late 19th century. In the United States, soybean cultivation gained traction, as farmers looked for alternatives to animal fats to meet growing food industry demands. Soybeans were especially attractive because they were drought-tolerant, naturally enhanced soil fertility through nitrogen fixation, and fit neatly into the established corn farming systems in the Midwest. Yet, the main challenge remained: how to efficiently extract oil from soybeans at an industrial scale. This is where technology made all the difference. Solvent extraction, particularly using hexane, allowed processors to separate oil from the bean in large quantities. With these modern techniques, the early 20th century marked the dawn of soybean oil as a major player in the food industry. Soybean oil's rise in the United States also had much to do with timing and market needs. During periods of war and economic instability, traditional oils, like coconut oil from Asia and domestic lard, became less available or more expensive. Soybean oil emerged as a stable, locally sourced alternative. Processing plants began to pop up across the country, and by the 1930s, soybean oil had become the most popular vegetable oil in the US. Its influence didn't stop there. After World War II, soybean oil began to replace traditional oils in many parts of the world. It was cheaper, available in bulk, and well-suited to the needs of a rapidly growing processed food industry. Throughout the 20th century, soybean oil became a critical ingredient in margarine, shortening, baked goods, and a wide variety of packaged food products. But the history of soybean oil is not without controversy. For decades, it was praised for being rich in polyunsaturated fats, like linoleic acid, which were thought to be heart-healthy. However, as the food industry sought to make soybean oil more shelf-stable and solid at room temperature, it began relying heavily on hydrogenation, a chemical process that unfortunately produced trans fats. Later scientific findings revealed that trans fats posed serious risks to heart health, triggering widespread reformulations and new regulations on food labeling beginning in the late 20th century. Today, the production of soybean oil remains enormous. China, the United States, Brazil, and Argentina are among the top producers, with large portions of soybean harvests directed toward both oil and protein extraction. Interestingly, in many cases, the oil is considered a byproduct. The primary focus of soybean processing, particularly in animal agriculture, is the protein-rich soybean meal that remains after oil extraction. This meal is used extensively as feed for chickens, cattle, and other livestock around the world. Rapeseed oil is one of the oldest vegetable oils known to humankind. Extracted from the seeds of the Brassica napus plant, a close relative of cabbage, broccoli, and mustard, this oil has a long-standing history in both Europe and Asia. For centuries, it served multiple purposes, fueling oil lamps, lubricating machinery, and occasionally even cooking. But early rapeseed oil had a problem. It contained high levels of erucic acid, a type of fatty acid that in large amounts could pose serious health risks to the heart and other organs. Because of this, the older, natural version of rapeseed oil was once considered unsuitable for human consumption. That began to change in the 1970s. In Canada, a group of scientists embarked on a mission to selectively breed a new variety of the rapeseed plant. Their goal was to produce an oil that would be safer, more palatable, and healthier. What they achieved was remarkable: a new strain of the plant that yielded oil with extremely low levels of erucic acid, a milder flavor, and a high content of monounsaturated fats, those same heart-healthy fats that nutritionists often praise. The new oil was given a new name: canola, short for Canadian Oil Low Acid. From that point forward, canola oil began to gain traction, first in North America and soon around the world, praised as a versatile and health-conscious alternative to other cooking oils. But the story of rapeseed oil stretches back much further than the 20th century. The Brassica oilseed varieties have been among the earliest cultivated crops, with documented use dating back 4,000 years in India. In China and Japan, evidence of its use goes back 2,000 years. In Northern Europe, rapeseed oil was used for lighting as early as the 13th century. When rapeseed oil was first marketed as an edible product in the late 1950s, it still had a number of undesirable qualities. The oil carried a strong, bitter taste and had a greenish hue due to residual chlorophyll. More importantly, it still contained levels of erucic acid too high for safe consumption, which kept it from being widely accepted as a food product. Beyond its role in food, rapeseed oil has had a rich industrial past. For generations, it was used as a lubricant in machinery, and for a long time, it lit homes across Europe, well before the advent of coal gas or kerosene. It was the oil of choice for railway carriage lamps and used widely in British train cars before gas lighting, and later, electric lighting, took over. In France, rapeseed oil burned in the famous Carcel lamps, which gave rise to the Carcel unit of measurement for illumination throughout much of the 19th century. In early Canadian lighthouses, rapeseed oil was the fuel of choice before mineral oils became the norm. With its affordability compared to whale oil, it was also commonly used with argon burners. Even during the American Civil War, rapeseed oil found limited use within the Confederacy, serving wherever lighting or lubrication was needed. Today, the reputation of rapeseed oil has shifted dramatically. It's often recognized as a relatively healthy fat with just 7% saturated fat, half the amount found in olive oil, and far less than the 51% found in butter. It's also rich in omega-3 and omega-6 fatty acids, compounds often praised for their role in heart and brain health, even if their actual effects are sometimes misunderstood or overhyped in popular media. Rapeseed oil is commonly sourced from British farms, especially when sold under labels emphasizing origin. Unlike olive oil, it remains stable at high temperatures and doesn't become toxic when exposed to heat. With a higher smoke point than olive oil, rapeseed oil is technically better suited for high-heat cooking, including deep frying, though most chefs would agree that using premium-grade rapeseed or olive oil for deep frying is more than a little excessive. As of 2024, global production of rapeseed oil was estimated at around 33 million tons. The leading producers were Canada, the European Union, China, and India. These regions have not only invested in rapeseed agriculture for cooking oil, but also for its continuing industrial applications, making rapeseed a remarkably adaptable crop in the modern world. Sunflower oil is a light, non-volatile oil extracted from the seeds of the sunflower, Helianthus annuus. Today, it's a common fixture in kitchens around the world, especially valued for frying and other high-heat cooking. It's also found in cosmetic products, where it serves as an emollient, softening and moisturizing the skin. But long before sunflower oil filled bottles on supermarket shelves, the sunflower itself held a far deeper significance for the ancient peoples of North America. Evidence suggests that sunflowers were domesticated as far back as 3000 BCE, making them one of the principal crops cultivated by Native American societies long before European contact. The uses of this bright, resilient plant went far beyond beauty. Its seeds were roasted for snacks or combined with other nuts and grains to form nutrient-rich food. The seeds were also ground into flour for bread and cakes. Even in prehistoric times, Native Americans had developed techniques to press sunflower seeds and extract their oil, an early form of the production process we still use today. Beyond its nutritional value, the sunflower served multiple roles. The vibrant petals were used to make natural dyes. Different parts of the plant played a part in medicinal practices, and some communities incorporated sunflowers into spiritual rituals. It wasn't just a crop, it was a cultural cornerstone, a source of sustenance, color, healing, and meaning. Sunflowers made their way to Europe in the 16th century, carried across the Atlantic by Spanish sailors. But for quite some time, Europeans appreciated the plant more for its ornamental appeal than for its practical uses. That changed in the 18th century, particularly in Russia, where sunflower seeds began to be used for oil production. By 1830, commercial-scale sunflower oil production was underway, and demand grew rapidly. Fields of sunflowers stretched across Russia and Ukraine, with more than 800,000 hectares cultivated by the early 1800s. It was from Russia that sunflower seeds eventually returned to the Americas, this time brought by immigrants from Eastern Europe. At first, sunflower seeds were valued not for oil, but as a protein-rich feed for livestock. Their effectiveness as animal feed contributed to expanding the crop's footprint. By the 1920s, the growing demand inspired the establishment of oil processing units across the continent, and sunflower oil began to re-enter the American diet in a new form. Canada, too, took note. As the sunflower gained popularity, especially in northern agricultural zones, the Canadian government launched a breeding program in the 1930s. These efforts laid the foundation for sunflower oil to become not just a regional product, but a globally significant agricultural commodity. Today, sunflower cultivation serves two primary commercial purposes: oil production and seed consumption. Sunflowers grown for oil are distinct. They bear small black seeds with thin shells and high oil content. These seeds are pressed to yield a pale, nearly flavorless oil rich in unsaturated fats, especially oleic and linoleic acids. Its mild taste and high smoke point make it ideal for cooking, margarine production, and even as a feedstock for biodiesel. The leftover seed cake, once the oil is removed, doesn't go to waste. It's repurposed into high-protein livestock feed. The high-oil sunflower varieties cultivated today are the result of decades of research and selective breeding, much of it spearheaded by Soviet scientists during the 20th century. Thanks to their work, sunflower oil evolved from a traditional crop to a modern agricultural powerhouse. By 2024, global sunflower oil production was projected to reach around 21 million tons. More than half of that came from just two countries, Russia and Ukraine. Despite geopolitical shifts and agricultural challenges, these nations remain at the heart of the sunflower oil industry. Though they come from the same fruit, there are actually two very different oils that the oil palm yields. The first, and certainly the most famous, is palm oil, a reddish-orange liquid extracted from the fleshy pulp of the fruit. But there is another, lesser-known oil that plays an equally vital role in global industries: palm kernel oil, derived from the fruit's small, hard seed nestled deep inside. The story of oil palm use stretches back thousands of years, particularly in West Africa, where it has long been an integral part of daily life. Traditional communities relied on palm oil for cooking, medicine, lighting, and even lubrication. However, the kernel inside the fruit remained mostly untapped for centuries. That's because extracting its oil was significantly harder. The kernel is encased in a tough shell that required either brute strength or special tools to crack. As a result, palm kernel oil remained on the fringes of history, overshadowed by its more accessible sibling. Everything changed in the 19th and 20th centuries. With the onset of the Industrial Revolution and the expansion of European colonialism across Africa and Southeast Asia, the demand for plant-based oils surged. Colonial powers like the Dutch in the East Indies and the British in Malaya and Africa saw the oil palm not just as a native plant, but as a profitable commodity. As machinery advanced, especially modern crushers and hydraulic presses, the technical barriers to extracting oil from the kernel began to fall away. Palm kernel oil was finally ready to enter the global market, and though they share a common origin, palm oil and palm kernel oil are chemically quite different. Palm oil, extracted from the fruit's outer flesh, is rich in unsaturated fats. It's soft, semi-solid at room temperature, and carries a natural reddish hue thanks to its beta-carotene content. In contrast, palm kernel oil is denser, paler, and loaded with medium-chain saturated fats like lauric acid and myristic acid, making it structurally closer to coconut oil than palm oil. This gives palm kernel oil unique qualities. It remains solid at room temperature, has excellent shelf stability, and is prized in industries where creamy textures and high foam lather are essential. That's why it has become a mainstay in the production of soaps, creams, shampoos, and detergents. It's also used in food manufacturing, especially for items like biscuits, frosting, and ice cream that benefit from the firmness and stability of solid fats. In the personal care world, palm kernel oil is often preferred over other oils because it creates rich, stable foam, perfect for luxurious lather and soaps. Meanwhile, its cousin, palm oil, dominates a different arena: food preparation. With its neutral taste, low cost, and ability to withstand high cooking temperatures, palm oil is the go-to choice in kitchens across the globe. It's used in everything from household cooking to mass food production. In many parts of the world, especially in Asia and Africa, it's the default cooking oil. Palm kernel oil, on the other hand, works more quietly behind the scenes, supporting industries that keep us clean, moisturized, and well-groomed. By 2024, the global production of palm kernel oil was projected to reach 8.6 million tons. While this is still much lower than palm oil's colossal output, it represents a crucial slice of the global economy. Peanut oil, also known as groundnut oil or Arachis oil, is one of those ingredients that quietly powers kitchens and industries across the globe. Extracted from peanuts, the oil typically has a mild or neutral flavor, but when it's made from roasted peanuts, it carries a much richer aroma and taste, instantly adding depth to whatever dish it touches. Thanks to its high smoke point, peanut oil has become a favorite for frying and sautéing, especially in regions like the United States, China, India, Africa, and Southeast Asia, where it plays a central role in both home cooking and street food traditions. To trace the roots of this oil, we must first follow the story of the peanut itself. Though fossil records are scarce, historians believe that the peanut plant likely originated in what is now Brazil or Peru. In ancient South America, where people were already skilled in pottery some 3,500 years ago, archaeologists have found clay jars shaped like peanuts or decorated with peanut motifs. These artifacts weren't just decorative. Peanuts were so valued that they were buried with the dead in Incan tombs along the arid western coasts of South America, believed to provide nourishment in the afterlife. Peanuts weren't just food, they were also part of ritual life. Tribes in central Brazil would grind them with maize to create a fermented, intoxicating drink used in celebrations. Farther north, peanuts were already being cultivated in Mexico by the time Spanish explorers arrived in the New World. Recognizing their usefulness, the Spanish took peanuts back to Europe. From there, peanuts made their way to Africa and Asia, carried by merchants and explorers along the expanding colonial trade routes. In West Africa, the peanut found especially fertile ground, literally and culturally. It adapted well to the tropical climate, and local communities quickly embraced it. When enslaved Africans were forcibly taken to North America, they brought peanut growing knowledge with them. Peanuts took root across the American South, where they became a staple crop. Even the word goober, still used in parts of the US today to refer to peanuts, comes from the Congo word nguba. In the 1700s, peanuts were studied by botanists and used primarily as livestock feed, especially for pigs. Records from around 1800 show that peanuts were already being grown commercially in South Carolina and used for food, oil, and even as a substitute for cocoa. Still, widespread peanut farming remained limited throughout the 19th century. Peanuts were seen as a poor man's food, and cultivating and harvesting them was labor-intensive until the invention of mechanical equipment around the turn of the century. Once labor-saving machines entered the scene, peanut farming, and especially oil production, began to expand rapidly. A major surge in peanut oil production came during the 19th and 20th centuries, driven by industrialization and colonial expansion. In Europe, countries like France, Britain, and Germany began importing massive quantities of peanuts from their colonies in Africa. The ports of West Africa, especially Dakar in Senegal, became major hubs of peanut trade. There, oil was pressed and shipped off to European factories where it was used in everything from cooking to soap making. Peanut oil provided an attractive alternative to coconut oil, olive oil, and animal fats, which were either more expensive or less readily available. Meanwhile, in Asia, peanut oil carved out a space of its own. In China and India, it wasn't just a substitute, it became a cherished part of culinary tradition. In Chinese kitchens, peanut oil was perfect for frying and stir-frying, thanks to its mild yet distinctive flavor and high heat tolerance. In India, especially in regions like Gujarat and Tamil Nadu, it was the go-to oil for daily cooking, until palm oil's affordability began to shift preferences in the late 20th century. Peanut oil's technical characteristics make it well-suited for the kitchen. It is rich in monounsaturated fats, particularly oleic acid, which makes it relatively stable when exposed to high heat. Its gentle aroma and resistance to becoming rancid quickly have made it an ideal choice not just for frying, but for processed food industries as well. But like many traditional oils, peanut oil has seen both highs and lows. In the mid-20th century, competition from cheaper oils like soybean and palm began pushing it out of the global spotlight. Large-scale production and marketing of these alternatives made peanut oil seem less economical for mass use. Still, it remained prized in communities that value flavor and tradition, in Indian households, Chinese restaurants, and European specialty shops that continue to stock it for discerning cooks. Perhaps one of the most remarkable moments in peanut oil's history came at the dawn of the 20th century, during the 1900 World's Fair in Paris. There, the German inventor Rudolf Diesel demonstrated his new engine running not on petroleum, but on peanut oil. His aim was to show that engines could be powered by plant-based fuels, something that could be produced locally by farmers. It was a visionary move, laying the groundwork for what we now call biofuel. Diesel believed that agricultural nations could harness their own crops for energy, and his choice of peanut oil was a symbol of that possibility. Fast forward to the present, and peanut oil continues to hold its place in the world's kitchens and industries. In 2024, global production was estimated to exceed 6 million tons, with China, India, Nigeria, and the United States leading the way. Cottonseed oil is a type of cooking oil derived from the seeds of the cotton plant, particularly from the species Gossypium hirsutum and Gossypium herbaceum. These plants are primarily cultivated for their fibers, which are used in the textile industry, but they also yield animal feed and oil. Much like other oil seeds, such as sunflower seeds, cotton seeds consist of an oil-rich kernel encased in a hard outer shell. During processing, the oil is extracted from the seed's inner core. Due to its stable flavor, cottonseed oil is widely used in products like salad dressings, mayonnaise, and similar condiments. The cotton plant has a complex and somewhat obscure early history. It is not entirely clear when or where it was first domesticated, as civilizations in both the Americas and Eurasia independently cultivated it and used it to make fabric. For thousands of years, cotton has been grown and spun into textiles, with archaeological evidence pointing to its use in ancient societies across India, Egypt, and Peru. In the United States, the cotton industry played a central role in shaping the Southern economy, especially before the Civil War, where cotton production became a primary source of income for slaveholders. As for the cottonseed, it was long considered nearly worthless, especially before the late 19th century. While cotton production surged in the 17th, 18th, and mid-19th centuries, so did the accumulation of unwanted cottonseed. Some of these seeds were reused for planting, used as fertilizer, or fed to livestock, but a large portion was simply discarded or left to rot, and sometimes even dumped illegally into rivers. In the 1820s and 1830s, Europe experienced a shortage of fats and oils. This crisis was driven by rapid population growth during the Industrial Revolution and compounded by the lingering effects of the British blockade during the Napoleonic Wars. As supplies dwindled, the prices of fats and oils rose steeply, putting basic cooking and lighting staples out of reach for many Europeans. Sensing an opportunity, several American entrepreneurs tried to capitalize on this European demand by crushing surplus cottonseed to extract its oil. However, these early ventures struggled, mainly because separating the hard outer hull from the seed's oily core was technically challenging. Most of these attempts failed within a few years. That all changed in 1857, when William Fee patented a machine called the huller, which effectively separated the tough outer shell from the cottonseed's kernel. This breakthrough made it possible to produce cottonseed oil on a commercial scale. Initially, the oil was used in lamps, providing a cheaper alternative to increasingly expensive whale oil and lard. But by 1859, this use began to decline. First because petroleum-based lighting entered the market, and then because the American Civil War and the abolition of slavery disrupted cotton production in the South. In the aftermath, cottonseed oil began to be used deceptively. Meat packers and lard producers secretly added it to pure animal fats, diluting their products without informing consumers. These practices came to light in 1884, revealing widespread adulteration. Cottonseed oil was also used to dilute olive oil, which caused a major backlash. In 1883, Italy banned American olive oil altogether, and other countries imposed import tariffs. These scandals damaged the reputation of cottonseed oil and caused its market value to plummet. Ironically, this sharp drop in price led to one of the oil's greatest commercial transformations. The newly formed company Procter & Gamble sought a cheap alternative to expensive animal fats for their products. They turned to cottonseed oil. But just as they began refining it, the spread of electricity reduced the demand for candles, one of their main products. This setback prompted the company to reimagine cottonseed oil not as a fuel, but as food. Using a patented hydrogenation process, Procter & Gamble managed to transform cottonseed oil into a substance with a texture remarkably similar to lard. In 1911, they launched an aggressive marketing campaign to introduce this new product, Crisco, a vegetable shortening that could replace animal fats in baking, frying, sautéing, and even salad dressings. Over the next 30 years, cottonseed oil became the dominant cooking oil in the United States. It served as a direct substitute for more expensive fats like lard and other oils. However, during World War II, shortages of cottonseed forced manufacturers to turn to other options, especially soybean oil. By 1944, soybean oil production had overtaken cottonseed oil, driven by limited cottonseed supply and the lower cost of soybeans. By the 1950s, soybean oil had effectively replaced cottonseed oil in most uses, especially as land previously dedicated to cotton was increasingly used to grow corn and soybeans. This shift was largely fueled by rising demand for corn syrup and ethanol. As a result, both the production and relevance of cottonseed oil continued to decline throughout the mid and late 20th century. As of 2024, global production of cottonseed oil is estimated to be around 5 million tons. Coconut oil, sometimes referred to as coconut fat, is an edible oil extracted from the kernel, meat, or milk of the fruit of the coconut palm. At temperatures below 25 degrees Celsius, 77 degrees Fahrenheit, it appears as a white solid fat, while at warmer temperatures it becomes a clear, thin liquid. The unrefined versions of coconut oil carry a distinct and unmistakable coconut aroma. Rich in medium-chain fatty acids, this oil has long been prized not only in the kitchen, but also in a wide range of industrial applications, including cosmetics and detergents. The coconut palm, known scientifically as Cocos nucifera, is believed to have originated in the island regions of Southeast Asia. It was the Austronesian people who first domesticated this plant. They carried it with them as they embarked on remarkable seafaring migrations during the Neolithic era, journeying eastward across the Pacific Islands and westward to the shores of Madagascar. In fact, the coconut played a vital role in these long voyages. It provided both food and drink, and its sturdy trunks were essential in constructing the iconic outrigger canoes that defined Austronesian navigation. From its Southeast Asian roots, the coconut spread further, reaching the coastal regions of India and later the Atlantic through the hands of Indian and Arab traders. During the colonial era, European sailors carried the coconut to the Americas. However, there remains a contested body of evidence suggesting that coconuts may have already reached the American continent long before Columbus's time, though no scholarly consensus exists on this theory. Over the centuries, the cultivation of this tropical fruit expanded across Southeast Asia and became deeply integrated into the region's economic, cultural, and domestic lives. Historically, Southeast Asian communities have found use for every part of the coconut tree, reflecting a traditional ethic of zero waste. The husks and shells were burned as fuel, the leaves were woven into roofing materials, the sap could be turned into sweet syrup, vinegar, or even alcoholic beverages. The trunks provided long-lasting timber. And, of course, the meat and water were consumed as part of daily nutrition. The fatty white flesh of the coconut could be pressed into milk, dried into copra, or heated to extract oil, a process that had been widely practiced long before the invention of modern presses and grinding machines. It wasn't until the colonial period that coconut oil began appearing on the global stage. In the 18th and 19th centuries, as European powers expanded into tropical territories, they began tapping into local agricultural products for trade and industry. Copra, the dried kernel of the coconut and the key raw material for oil, became a major export from Southeast Asia and the Pacific Islands to Europe. There, coconut oil found uses far beyond the kitchen. It became a key ingredient in soap making, lubricants, and candle production. Before petroleum and synthetic chemicals rose to dominance, coconut oil was a staple in household and industrial manufacturing. But by the mid-20th century, the global reign of coconut oil began to fade. Cheaper and more scalable oils like soybean, corn, and palm oil began to take over the market. The shift was driven largely by industrial farming efficiencies and government-backed agricultural policies in countries like the United States and Brazil. Adding to its troubles, the 1980s and 1990s brought a wave of health warnings in the West about the dangers of saturated fats. Coconut oil, with its high saturated fat content, was cast in a negative light, accused of contributing to heart disease and high cholesterol. These concerns led to a sharp decline in its popularity in Western markets. However, that narrative began to change in the early 21st century. With the growing demand for natural and traditional health products, coconut oil experienced a remarkable resurgence. Virgin coconut oil, which is minimally processed and retains its natural flavor and aroma, became popular again, both in cooking and in the beauty industry. Increasingly, consumers began to appreciate the oil's long shelf life, its tropical fragrance, and its natural antimicrobial properties. Furthermore, new research has helped reframe the discussion around saturated fats, highlighting differences between types of saturated fatty acids and pointing to the potential health benefits of lauric acid, which is abundant in coconut oil. By 2024, global production of coconut oil reached about 3.5 million tons. The Philippines, Indonesia, and India continue to be the world's leading producers, reflecting the plant's enduring importance in the tropical belt. The olive tree, Olea europea, was first cultivated in the Levant, a region that includes parts of present-day Syria, Lebanon, Israel, and Palestine. From these ancient groves, the olive spread westward to Cyprus, Crete, and Greece, eventually reaching the entire Mediterranean coast from Italy and Spain to North Africa. Archaeological evidence tells us that olive oil has been in production since at least 4000 BCE, and in the ancient world its uses went far beyond the kitchen. Civilizations such as the Egyptians, Greeks, and Romans used olive oil as fuel for lamps, as medicine, as a base for cosmetics, and in religious rituals. In ancient Greece, the olive tree was held sacred. Olive oil wasn't just food, it was a prize. Victors in the Olympic Games were awarded it. Warriors and wrestlers rubbed it on their skin before battle, and it became a highly prized commodity aboard Greek and Phoenician trading ships. Ancient texts often mention olive oil with deep reverence, even calling it liquid gold. The Romans took olive oil production to a whole new level. They developed advanced techniques for pressing and storing the oil, building large-scale production facilities across their empire, from Hispania, modern-day Spain, to the Levant. Olive oil became central to both Roman cuisine and economy. Taxes could be paid in olive oil, and the amphora, ceramic vessels used to store and transport the oil, have been unearthed in ruins from England to Egypt, showing how far this golden liquid traveled in ancient trade networks. After the fall of the Roman Empire, olive oil production declined in some areas, but survived in the Islamic world and the Byzantine Empire. In the Arab world, the olive tree remained a blessed plant, revered and even mentioned in the Quran as a tree that grows on Mount Sinai, producing oil that gives light and serves as nourishment. Innovations in agriculture and distillation by Muslim scholars helped sustain and advance olive oil production across regions like Spain, North Africa, and the Middle East during the Middle Ages. The Renaissance brought a revival of European trade and interest in Mediterranean products. Olive oil re-emerged as a staple commodity, especially in Italy, Spain, and France. It was not just a food item, it became embedded in the culinary traditions and daily lives of people in these regions. As European colonial powers expanded, they brought the olive tree with them to the New World, introducing it to places like South America, California, and even Australia. Still, for a long time, olive oil remained most closely associated with the Mediterranean way of life. In the 20th century, olive oil faced fierce competition from cheaper vegetable oils such as corn, soybean, and later palm oil. These alternatives, mass-produced and aggressively marketed, dominated global markets. But by the end of the century, scientific studies began to cast olive oil in a new light. Researchers highlighted the benefits of the Mediterranean diet, rich in fruits, vegetables, fish, and of course, olive oil. Its high content of monounsaturated fats, antioxidants like polyphenols, and vitamin E helped establish its reputation as a heart-healthy, anti-inflammatory food. With the rise of wellness culture in the 21st century, olive oil made a powerful comeback. Products like extra virgin olive oil became emblems of clean, quality eating. Consumers across the world began to see olive oil not just as an ingredient, but as a lifestyle choice. Italy, Spain, and Greece remain the world's leading producers, but now countries like Tunisia, Morocco, Turkey, and even the United States are entering the market with premium olive oils of their own. Besides olive oil and the other oils we've already explored, there are several other plant-based oils widely consumed across different cultures. Corn oil, sesame oil, avocado oil, flaxseed oil, and rice bran oil, to name a few. Every region has its own preferred oil shaped by climate, tradition, and taste. What about your country? What kind of vegetable oil is most commonly produced and consumed where you live? Let us know in the comments below.